Miss Chambers, what are you doing in my room? Oh, you came to tell me to start my novel study? Why, thank you so much. I probably should get to that. Just give me 1 second. Let me get ready. That's much better. I'm sorry you had to see that. Go ahead, take a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Oh, you asked what book I'm reading? I'm reading The Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Okay, let's start with the theme analysis. The key theme that I chose to talk about is the importance of faith when faced with challenges, such as when Pi was stranded on the lifeboat alone. The novel The Life of Pi by Yann Martel undoubtedly exudes faith. Martel explores this theme through the life and survival of a boy, Pi, from Pondicherry, India. We are first introduced to Pi when he is first starting to experiment with his faith. He's a very curious child who quickly finds interest in many religions. He soon becomes a practicing Christian, Muslim, and Hindu. Later on in the story, Pi turns to his religion in order to help cope with the somewhat impossible task he's faced with. Surviving 227 days alone on a life raft with a fully grown Bengal tiger. Pi's devotion to his faith and his trust in God are essential to his survival and allow him to endure things that prove to be nothing short of a miracle. Coming from a non-religious family, Pi must explore his faith in secrecy. This does not stop our strong-willed character. Pi's already strong faith continues to grow as the novel progresses. This quote from the novel truly explains how Pi's faith develops through the novel. A germ of religious exaltation, no bigger than a mustard seed, was sown in me and left to germinate. It has never stopped growing since that day. We see Pi's faith at its strongest point during his time surviving on the life raft. He continues to pray every day, even when it seems hard for him to do so. Pi's religion evolves from an aspect of his childhood experimentation and becomes an absolute necessity to his survival. Pi values his religious rituals just as highly as he does food and water. He needs all of these things to be able to survive. These rituals soon become an important motif in the play. Pi practices these rituals while adapting to the conditions he's faced with. He knows that he's not praying properly, as he does not have access to many ceremonial items needed for these prayers. He isn't even sure if these prayers are being heard. But these things bring Pi an essential peace of mind while he's on the boat. This helps him to stay sane and motivated throughout the novel. Faith is extremely important when being faced with tough times, such as Pi's battle for life. If Pi had lost sight of his faith, he would not have been able to tell this amazing story. There's many instances where Pi is inches away from giving up all hope, yet each time he finds himself able to keep pushing forwards. Small things bring him solace during his survival, whether it be a tiny fish or a newly discovered tool. Pi takes these things as gifts from God, which bring him hope. I was giving up. I would have given up, if a voice hadn't made itself heard in my heart. The voice said, "I will not die. I refuse it. I will make it through this nightmare. I will beat the odds. As great as they are, I have survived so far. Miraculously. Now I will turn miracle into a routine." Each minute Pi lives on this boat is a miracle, and he knows it. All he can do at this point is continue to stay strong and have faith in God's plan. This theme is not only crucial in this story, but also in our lives. To an extent, faith is very important in our daily lives. This does not necessarily mean you must have faith in God. In fact, the message of this story is just as important to a Catholic as it is to an atheist. Although portrayed with religion in extreme circumstances, many lessons can be applied to our struggles. Pi goes through unbearably tough times and never seems to lose hope. This is what we must take away from the novel. No matter how tough times may seem, and when there is no end in sight, one must continue to never lose hope, because ultimately, no ocean is endless. It's just a matter of drifting to shore and never losing hope. Next, let's talk about the theme work proportion of this project. Here, I'll discuss the connection between the first sentence and the last sentence of my story. The first sentence is, "My suffering had left me sad and gloomy." The last sentence of the novel is, "To all these people, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks." Pi's first-person account of his story begins while explaining how he felt during his first few years in Canada, after being lost at sea. When he arrives in Canada, Pi is all alone, just like he was for so long on the lifeboat. After going through unbearable circumstances, Pi is left as a shell of what he once was. He is no longer the curious, fun-loving boy from Pondicherry, India, that I, as a reader, had fallen in love with. Once again, he is left to find comfort in religion. In the first paragraph, he states that mindful practice of religion had slowly brought him back to life. Pi is extremely committed and intelligent, so it is no surprise that he had no problem with the education and schooling in this foreign country. Throughout the first few pages of the book, Pi talks about how out of place he feels in Canada. He describes a memory of his first experience eating at a Canadian Indian food restaurant. When he begins eating with his hands, he can't help but feel judged when the waiter calls him fresh off the boat. This certainly doesn't help Pi, as he's already in a fragile state of mind. The last sentence of Pi's story is him giving thanks to everyone that helped him adapt to his new life in Canada. Here he addresses everyone that helped him since he was found washed up on the beach in Mexico. Pi gives thanks to all the people that gave him opportunities and opened doors for him. He describes his life in Canada as being a long, easy corridor, where all he had to do was walk down it. With his religion and through the help of others, Pi is finally in good spirits once again. He has become a successful father who is happily married. This is a happy ending to an amazing yet gruesome story. In the second part of the theme work, I'll discuss the most important sentence of the novel. The most important quote in the book comes after Mr. Chiba and Mr. Okimoto refuse to believe Pi's story of his survival on the lifeboat with Richard Parker. Pi proudly says, "Don't you bully me with your politeness. Love is hard to believe. Ask any lover. Life is hard to believe. Ask any scientist. God is hard to believe. Ask any believer. What is your problem with hard to believe?" The Life of Pi is a novel full of hard to believe. The story Pi tells of his survival is one full of miracles and far-fetched occurrences. The message the author is trying to achieve with this quote is that just because something is hard to believe doesn't mean it's impossible. If you choose to be only rational in life and don't look for deeper meaning in what life hands you, you'll be left feeling empty. Yann Martel attempts to inspire the reader with this quote. If we live our lives as agnostics and refuse to believe in anything that isn't 100% factual, there would be no point to living at all. If you find love hard to believe, does that mean you should stop searching for love? No. If you find life itself hard to believe, does that mean you should deny all scientific discoveries and theories? No. Just because something is hard to believe does not prove it to be impossible. If one were to deny anything that is deemed hard to believe, their life would become dry and useless, as they live alone in their world of factuality. This is said throughout the novel. Having faith in things such as God, science, and love bring purpose to life. If you believe in nothing, you will lose all motivation. Pi's belief is what helped him to survive. If he gave up on his survival because it seemed unlikely and it seemed hard to believe, he would not have lasted on that lifeboat, and we would not be here talking about this story. The author attempts to condemn the unimaginative side of the reader through this quote. The distinction between fantasy and reality is extremely blurred in the life of Pi, as Pi's entire original story is revealed to be a metaphor for a story much less fantastic and much more gruesome. He leaves the reader with the choice of which story to choose, much like how in our lives we must decide on what to believe and what not to. Martel attempts to make the reader realize the importance of belief and how people tend to believe what they want to hear and what's more convenient for them. It gives the reader the choice of factuality or the choice of imagination and fantasy. This quote embodies this crucial decision the author faces us with, and that is why it's so important. And with that, I conclude my novel, study, and review of The Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Thank you so much for watching, and I am going to get some sleep. Good night. Oh!